Welcome to Law&Crime's Daily Debrief, everybody. Convicted rapist Harvey Weinstein has headed from a hospital to a jail. Weinstein has been in a guarded hospital wing since his conviction about a week and a half ago. His spokesman says he underwent a heart procedure, and today Weinstein has been moved to New York's Rikers Island. There he's listed as housed in the jail's North Infirmary Command. The Law&Crime network will be there when Weinstein is sentenced next Wednesday, March 11th. Day 2 of prosecution opening statements in the murder trial of real estate heir Robert Durst. Durst is accused of killing his friend Susan Berman in December 2000 because prosecutors think she helped Durst cover up evidence that he had killed his wife Kathleen in 1982. Prosecutors say Berman was starting to talk to the police, so Durst killed her to shut her up. Kathy Durst's body has never been found. Prosecutors are also tying in the death of 71-year-old Morris Black. Durst was tried for murdering Black, but he said a struggle for a handgun ended in self-defense. The jury acquitted Durst at that trial, but he did plead guilty to a charge related to dismembering Black's corpse. Friends say Durst's marriage to his wife turned violent. In the weeks before her disappearance, Kathy took herself to the hospital and told the doctor she was a victim of domestic violence.
29-year-old female with history of blunt trauma to left side of the face. Patient allegedly slapped with hand. That's what she told the doctor. That doctor's going to tell you that back in 1982, it was not unusual for women to come in and to not identify their abuser. Though the medical forms not indicate who assaulted Kathy, Kathy was legally married to Bob Durst at this time. They were married at the time he killed her. Yet, the evidence will show...
That's the third time, Judge. I've got to object to this conclusion that he repeats, and that is that Bob Durst killed Kathy first.
The evidence is going to show very clearly and unequivocally and beyond any doubt that Bob Durst killed Kathy Durst.
Prosecutors say in another incident, Kathy Durst apparently had a panic attack during one of her rotations at the hospital. Her former classmate described it as highly unusual.
She could barely speak, and it was crystal clear to me that she was petrified, that she was having some kind of near panic attack. And in fact, this attending said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "It's clear that she's extremely anxious about something," right in front of everybody, because it was so palpable. And this is before the conversation about her husband, so I had the faintest idea what she could be so frightened about. I think the thing was not knowing the answer to the question, though. It was just so completely out of proportion. She looked absolutely fear-struck and on the verge of a full-blown panic attack.
Kathy and Bob Durst were fighting over an apparently imminent divorce. Their landlord said Kathy called looking for a new apartment just for herself and indicated she needed to get away from her husband.
Kathy wanted what she believed was a fair settlement, and she was not going to leave the marriage without getting what she thought she was entitled to. Now, by 1982, by this time, Bob Durst was basically living in the Riverside Drive penthouse. Kathy was living in East 86th Street, which again was much closer to the hospital. In January of '82, the property manager at East 86th Street was Karen Minatello. Now, Bob and Kathy had a pretty large two-bedroom apartment at East 86th Street. Karen Minatello, again, she testified previously. You're going to hear her videotape testimony. Karen Minatello is going to tell you that about 2 weeks before Kathy's disappearance, Kathy called her.
And Kathy was last seen by her friends at a party on Sunday, January 31st, 1982.
Now that afternoon, Kathy went to a party at her friend Gilberta Najami's house. Gilberta Najami is since deceased, and that was in Connecticut. Now, for the geography so that you understand, where she lived in Connecticut was about 45 minutes to an hour away from South Salem, New York. Now, while at the party, Kathy calls up Peter Schwartz. If you remember, Peter Schwartz is the guy that Bob had assaulted about a year earlier. and there was a civil suit that Kathy was aware about. Now, during this call, they discussed the civil suit that Peter Schwartz had filed against Durst related to that assault. He said that Kathy expressed her strong desire that Peter proceed with his civil suit against Durst. Peter responded that he had settled the litigation, a settlement, and that case was going to go away. He's going to tell you that Kathy made very clear that she was very upset as a result of the settlement because she was not going to be able to use the assault as leverage in her divorce.
Friends say Kathy left the party after receiving a call from her husband, the defendant. She then apparently returned to their home in South Salem, New York. Robert Durst maintains he put Kathy on a train back to the city.
Now, the next day, Monday, February 1st, 1982, Kathy was supposed to begin her first day of an ambulatory pediatric clinic at Bronx Memorial Hospital. The rotation Kathy was due to start was her ambulatory pediatric clinic at Bronx Memorial Hospital, which is basically a part of the hospitals that are right next to each other. At 9 o'clock, Kathy was supposed to show up and was supposed to be oriented. Kathy never made it. It's been now 38 years.
Durst reported Kathy missing to the NYPD 4 days later. Here is his version of events.
He said Kathy returned from Gilberta's party. He said they had a sandwich. Durst put Kathy on a train back to New York City. He then said he visited his neighbors, that's going to be the mayors, and he wasn't doing anything nefarious. He said he spoke with Kathy by phone between 11 and 11:15 p.m. She seemed fine. She was watching TV in their Riverside Drive penthouse. He said whatever happened to Kathy afterward was a result of her drug use, promiscuity, and criminal companions. Now, the evidence is going to show that each of these assertions was false, because as the evidence demonstrates, and as he will tell you, is in essence, he's lived his life doing what he wants, and it's worked.
All right, let's jump in with some analysis on this case right now. Attorneys Brian Buckmeyer and Tiffany Simmons are with me here in New York. Tiffany visiting from Atlanta. So let's break down the state's theory of this case. We've got alleged domestic violence by the defendant against his wife. She disappears from her shift at the hospital with no phone call to superiors. What happened to her?
Well, we don't know. But what I'm saying is, whose murder is this? We're supposed to be here for Kathy, Berman.
For Susan, but it's easy to get confused.
Right. It's confusion. So what I said earlier is a lot of information overload, and we hope that this information overload is not a disaster in disguise for the jury.
One has to wonder, Brian Buckmeyer, let's talk a little bit more about the tactics here. The state has this crafty and interesting to watch visual performance of all of this, but is it dragging on for too long? Is it too much? And the defense is objecting to a lot of it. Are the objections sound?
I don't think the objections are sound. I think that they're kind of annoyed as to how this opening statement is going. This opening statement bleeds into what actually seems more like a summation. And I think that's where the problem is. The question becomes is how is the defense going to combat this? Are they going to equally go as long as the prosecution to make it seem like, hey, this is just the way we do trials? Or are they going to be surgical, come right in and cut to the meat and potatoes of this case?
One has to wonder. Let's turn to attorney Dina Dow, watching with us from Los Angeles right now. Dina, these prosecution opening statements are supposed to last 2 whole days, wrap up today, and then the defense gets at least a day on Monday. How long could the defense go?
Now I think we have an inkling of why this trial is supposed to go 5 months. When I watched this yesterday, I wasn't liking his really lengthy, backselling of the story. But today I'm in it with him. He's really telling a compelling story. And because he's going so long, I think the video is actually helping engage the jurors so they don't just disconnect.
To a degree, perhaps. I think that perhaps it could be condensed a little bit. I always say it's helpful to show some pictures during opening so that jurors match faces with names and they can remember things like that. But again, a long case, you need to get things to sink in, and this is a complex case. Dina, we'll see you at the end of the broadcast here along with the rest of the panel. A rally today in Pennsylvania to show support for 2 public defenders suddenly fired from their jobs in suburban Philadelphia. Law and Crime guest Emily Glavin Almanza sent us video of the rally. County officials control public defender offices in Pennsylvania, and though no official reason for the termination of the lead public defenders, Dean Beer and Keisha Hudson, has been given, internal emails suggest the firings may have been punishment for a court brief which advocates for changes in Pennsylvania's cash bail system.
So we are here standing in solidarity, and we support both Keisha and Dean, and we are also here to support the demands that they be reinstated immediately to their positions so that we can have a true democracy and we can start to look at justice holistically and making sure that the people who stand up for us, that the lawyers that are standing up for us, that they are not being punished and that they are not being removed from their positions, because this is a scare tactic. And what's going to happen is if we don't stand up and correct it here, it's going to trickle down to the other states.
People voted for you to think, not to just make knee-jerk reactions because you don't know what participatory defense is. So instead of you asking what this is, instead of you being a part of what this is, you decide to make a knee-jerk reaction that was not thoughtful. And your not thoughtful actions are impacting black and brown, underserved people in this county.
Emily Galvin Almanza joins us now here on The Debrief. Emily, you were at the rally, and there's a serious sense of resentment that politics should not be shutting down advocates for the constitutional rights of others. That was the theme today.
Yeah, it was a really big moment that I think is going to have statewide importance. What we saw here is two amazing public defense leaders, some of the first people in the country to bring participatory defense and holistic defense principles to the state of Pennsylvania, were dismissed, it seems, for revealing some of the hardships that their clients were experiencing under Pennsylvania's current pretrial detention laws. These are laws that are being litigated right now by the ACLU, and where the gentleman in the trench coat in that rally, there's a sort of tall white man who's actually a state senator who's brought new legislation to transform the cash bail laws. With these firings comes the implication that if criminal defense lawyers and public defenders in particular speak out and speak too much truth, they may lose their jobs. And it's a very serious, chilling concern.
Yeah, a serious thought, chilling, as you said. Many of the protesters came from some distance. Where was everyone from today?
There were a lot of folks who were from Montco. Some folks came down from Philadelphia. I myself drove out from New York. Some of the speakers you see here are from participatory defense hubs in Baltimore. I ran into Raj Jayadev there, who's actually the founder of the participatory defense movement, and he came out from California to support Keisha and Dean.
So a lot of support from across the country. Why is it that Pennsylvania controls public defenders at the county rather than the Commonwealth level? Because almost every other state handles things at the state level to try to insulate public defenders from local politics.
So it's a problem across Pennsylvania. It is not unique. I will say that there are many county defense agencies across the country. California in particular, where I used to practice, has county level public defenders, as do other states. However, generally you would see a political recoiling from actions that have the appearance of censoring supposedly independent, constitutionally mandated counsel. I think what we see here is actually more a problem of the boldness of the county commissioners and their cavalier handling of their role rather than a structural problem.
Many questions yet to be answered on this. Emily, appreciate the insight for us tonight.
Thanks.
And still ahead tonight here on The Debrief, the trial of an Iowa mother. Authorities say strangled her own daughter to death because she reminded her of her ex. Day 2 of testimony in this case is straight ahead. Day 2 of testimony in the case of an Iowa mother accused of strangling her 5-year-old daughter to death with a pair of pajamas. Prosecutors say the defendant confessed. The defense says the confession was coerced. Firefighters found Chloe Thomas dead in her bedroom on July 19, 2018. Her mother, Kelsie Thomas, told detectives she put Chloe down for a nap around 1:30 and then settled down for a nap herself. When she woke up, she says she found her daughter dead in the closet and called 911. An ambulance arrived to take Chloe to the hospital, and her parents followed behind in a police squad car.
Aaron asked Kelsie. He said, I don't want to upset you, but what happened? And Kelsie said that they ate lunch, they took a nap. She went, and, after the nap, she checked on Chloe, and she found Chloe hanging in the closet by a pair of pajamas.
Was there any questioning that you carried out, like an interrogation at that time?
Not at all. I purposely didn't say anything. That is the only thing that was said during that ride to the hospital. Well, we pulled up right behind the ambulance as they were getting Chloe out of the ambulance. So we watched them bring Chloe into the emergency room. We followed in behind her. They took Chloe into a trauma room. Aaron went into the trauma room with Chloe, and then I stood out in the hallway with Kelsie and the 2-year-old.
Is there anything that stuck out in particular about standing out with her at that time?
Kelsie was crying. At one point she said she felt like she was going to be sick.
The defendant's husband wasn't home when this all happened. He came when police and paramedics were called. Then he went to the hospital and described the defendant's demeanor while she spoke to officers.
It was very odd to me. I didn't understand why she had the demeanor after she just had lost a child, so it didn't seem normal to me.
A criminal has testified that the only discernible DNA on the pajamas was the victim's.
The DNA profile developed from a swab of the outside bottom right pant leg, which is item 8.1, indicated a mixture of 2 individuals. The profile of the major contributor matched the known DNA profile of Chloe Chandler, and then the probability of finding that profile in a population of unrelated individuals chosen at random would be less than 1 out of 7.4 octillion. The additional factors were insufficient to determine the minor contributor.
Did you, I believe you said that there was a second swab that you took from those pajama pants?
Yes, this would have been a swab of the outside bottom left pant leg, which is our item 8.2. The profile of the major contributor matched the known DNA profile of Chloe Chandler, and the probability of finding this profile in a population of unrelated individuals chosen at random would be less than 1 out of 7.4 octillion.
And with regards to that second swab, were you also to determine a minor contributor?
Yes, there was a minor present.
And were you able to do further testing on that?
No, again, the factors present were insufficient to determine the profile of the minor contributor.
On cross, the defense asked why investigators tested for DNA under the victim's fingernails.
The thought is, especially in death investigations, collecting the fingernail clippings, if there was any sort of struggle, there could be the possibility that if skin cells or even blood from the person who the victim was having that struggle with could be under those fingernail clippings. So as I'm doing DNA analysis, I would swab the fingernails to hopefully develop a profile and see what is on them.
And in this situation, there were no DNA factors foreign to Chloe detected in the profiles developed from the swabs of her left and her right fingernail clippings. Is that correct?
Yes.
So essentially the only DNA that you found underneath her fingernails was Chloe's?
Yes.
The day after the victim died, the lead investigator checked the house and spoke with the defendant. He then looked into the closet and said he did not notice any signs whatsoever of a struggle.
Kelsie advised that Chloe had tied a knot around the dowel rod and that she had found Chloe essentially with her neck in the crotch region of the pants, just essentially with her neck laying there, I believe, to the left-hand side of her body.
And I know that you continued to ask questions throughout this interview, correct?
Correct.
And you also asked, at some point, you asked Kelsie, you asked her what it felt like when she picked Chloe up?
Yes. Yes, I did.
And what was Kelsie's response?
She advised that Chloe felt like dead weight.
Our guests are with us one final time. Let's begin with Dina Dahl in Los Angeles. Dina, the way that the state is prosecuting this case is to present a lot of evidence, and much of it is testimony from people close to the defendant who basically are saying that her demeanor was off. We heard it from 2 relatives yesterday. We heard it from another one today. Is that solid enough evidence here?
You know, let me just start by saying this is like a really horribly sad case to cover, and the jurors are going to have a huge impact on this. Mothers don't tend to fare well if they're seen as, injuring or killing their child. I don't think that her demeanor should be that impactful. There could be a lot of shock here. The evidence does not seem very strong, although the defendant's husband on the stand was not great. He seemed to backtrack a little bit about what him earlier saying she was a great mom, and then he seemed to backtrack a little bit on the stand, and that is probably going to have some weight with the jury.
Let's turn to our guests in studio here. Tiffany Simmons, I'll start with you. So maybe if we're to agree with Dina's theory, the defense should worry more about the demeanor situation than about the false confession expert, or maybe they should worry about both.
Well, they definitely have to worry about both. One thing that stood out to me, the mother said that the child was like dead weight. Unfortunately, because she was dead weight in her life, I believe she murdered her. So we'll see how this unfolds.
Strong opinions from Tiffany. Brian Buckmeyer, your assessment of this.
So we'll go piece by piece. The first thing as a defense attorney I would tell the jurors, tell me what a mother should react, or how a mother should react when they lose their child. And I would just pause. And I think that will be impactful enough to say there is no right or wrong way. As to the false confession, I think it kind of comes into the same kind of context of what do you want someone to say when they have lost their child? And you can look at it from natural births or unnatural deaths. And I think that, again, is going to have an issue with that confession as to whether or not it was truthful or not. I think the defense has something to work with here, but I think it's not much.
So I tend to agree with that line of questioning. And of course, the fear is always on cross. Do you ask open-ended questions? But it would force a witness to acknowledge his or her own prejudices about what someone should look like if they suffer a traumatic loss.
Exactly. I think you asked the question, and it's a bit of a punch below the waist, but I think you do it especially to some of the men who are witnesses. You ask the father, how do you think your wife and the mother of your children should react when her child dies? Or even some of the officers who are males as well. I don't think it's an answer they're going to be able to give. I think it's going to be powerful.
Shock doesn't always look like it does in movies. Appreciate the insight from the panel tonight. Great to have everybody with us, and thank you for joining us. We'll be back at 5 o'clock tomorrow with our recap of the day in court right here on The Debrief.